O Yahweh, open up you my lips, and let my mouth show forth your praise. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputsu o Yaveka, Wayanusa Misanecha Mipanecha. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputsu o Yaveka, Wayanusa Misanecha Mipanecha. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
Shalom, family, and welcome to Into All Truth. May the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come. Abba Yah, we just thank you for a word of wisdom, revelation, knowledge, and understanding coming forth from you. We ask that you lead us into all truth and show us things to come. We thank you for the work you're doing by the Ruach HaKodesh in this teaching. And so, family, where was the first Passover ever celebrated? Well, it was celebrated in Egypt. But which Egypt? You may have noticed that they've come out with all of this information about the true technology that lies between the Pyramid of Giza in Africa, which today they call so-called Egypt. But is that the real Egypt? Is that the original Egypt? Is that the true old world Egypt? Where was the first Passover ever celebrated? When the people of Jerusalem had to flee and return home to their land. Now, today, I want you to imagine that the dry bones in the four corners of the earth must rise up and return to Israel, the dry bones of Israel. Because in Genesis 50 and 12 and Joshua 24 and 32, only the bones of Jacob and Joseph were returned to the cave of Machpelah. Machpelah is near Eden. And so this is what the dry bones rising is about. The prophecy of the dry bones rising has not yet happened. Breath has to enter into the bodies of Israel. That's the Ruach HaKodesh. They have to awaken, remember who we are, which is already happening right now. This is what he says to Ezekiel, son of man. These bones are the whole house of Israel. So this hasn't happened yet. How people can be teaching about prophecy and they're not addressing this, I don't know. And then he says, you will know that I am Yahuwah when I've opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves. And so this is a huge end time prophecy. And you will see the 11 sons of Jacob rise from Egypt and return to the land. And it's not that Egypt, this over in Africa. It's this one over here. Family, they just do not want you to know that America is Egypt. And they just want to distract from the second Exodus, aka gathering. All right, return to the land of true Israel and the identity of Israel. And I'm just going to show and prove throughout this video once again that these structures were built by the Israelites, both in captivity and in their own lands. That the Egypt that they're calling Egypt today is just a colony, and it was a high place built by the Israelites. And that, of course, America is true Egypt. But they're trying to hide these things. They're trying to, distract and deflect. And they're trying to use and they probably will be using the fallen angel aliens are your gods and your rescuers narrative. So let's see how they're feeding into this. And then we're going to go over all the evidence that I have reviewed in many of my videos, of course, about America being true Egypt. And of course, ultimately about how the 10 tribes really, and all 12 tribes were builders. And so I'm not saying they built 100% of everything, and a lot of it was built in captivity, but a lot of it was voluntarily built too. So we're going to just show some proof for that. And of course, I'm going to have a big surprise unveiling proof at the end that is shocking and beautiful. And another final word again. Another mic drop. So let's get into this study. But first, let's just tease on the information. And then afterwards, we're going to answer the final question as to why are they bringing out this information now? You know, fam, they don't do anything for no reason. Yeah, you've guessed it's a distraction. But why? All right, let's get into it.
You are literally not going to believe what they've just found underneath the Khafre, the middle pyramid in Giza. I can't believe it myself, but I'm going to show you. There was a press release yesterday in Italy from Filippo Biondi and Corrado Malanga. They have written a paper which has got all the results of their synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, which is a SAR radar scan. So basically using sound waves, I believe, they have scanned deep inside the middle pyramid and all underneath the structure. And then from the results, they are able to create like 3D models of what they think the sound waves are showing. And so underneath the pyramid, they have found 8 huge cylindrical structures that are aligned perfectly in twos. And there's 4 pairs of them, and they go deep into the earth. So this is the 3D recreation of what the SAR scan shows. So you can see these 8 cylindrical pillars that go deep down, and then each pillar is surrounded by like a circular path or walkway or tube. Okay, this is not all. This is the beginning of it. Not only that, at the very base of the pyramid, like ground zero of the pyramid in the center, they have found 5 of these kind of stacked chambers, which are identical, look like they're kind of identical in size and form as the king's chamber of the Khufu pyramid, the one next door. So these are made with huge blocks of granite, red granite that was brought hundreds of miles away to the Giza plateau and stacked very specifically in this sort of horizontal sandwich with a vaulted ceiling. I'm way too excited. So 5 of them. 5 of these chambers just chilling in the middle of the pyramid. And then 8 cylindrical, massive underground structures that go deep down. And what is under that? I'll show you. So 4 of these cylindrical structures dropping deep down into the earth, they go into 2 square sort of chambers, 2 square empty spaces, which are 80 meters by 80 meters wall to wall. Each of these square chamber walls is 80 meters identically all the way around. Perfect square chambers with 4 cylindrical shafts going into them, or pillars, whatever they are, cylindrical structures with winding, coiled, maybe a walkway. We're not exactly sure. This is just what is showing up from the scans. Oh, and I'm sorry, did I tell you how deep these cylindrical tubes go under the pyramid? 648 meters. 648 meters under the main pyramid. And then you hit the 80-meter 2 chambers, and then this is a map of the whole of the Giza plateau. So in the center, wait, I'm going to move. This here is the chambers that are in the center pyramid. The cylindrical chambers going down to whatever's going on 648 meters down here. There is evidence that there are more structures that go on for 2 kilometers underneath the Giza plateau, all interconnecting underneath all 3 pyramids. And apparently there's going to be more press releases. This is just the beginning. The team are going to do some more press. This is so very exciting. One thing I will say is that the idea that the pyramid was just a tomb for a dead pharaoh, why would you need 648 meters of perfectly aligned north to south pillars that go into an antechamber that then connect to an underground network of stuff? It's a bit excessive, isn't it? Just for a tomb. I'm going to be following this very closely, and if I find out anything more, I will bring you the information. I hope you have a fantastic day. Happy hunting.
All right, so we're going to compare and contrast the biggest and oldest pyramids in the world with Giza. And we're also going to track through Israel's relationship with Egypt. So we're going to start off with Israel's captivity to Egypt, beginning with Abraham. But we're also going to look at the Egyptian technology and science as it relates to the captivity of Israel and the Bible, and compare and contrast that with the colony of Egypt that is in Africa. Let's go. All right, fam. So now you're going to find out watching what videos I've already done, a lot of content I've already made on this, that this has been done, this discussion of them being power structures has been around for a long time. This is nothing new. And so we really need to find out what this is all about. And so I'm going to really lay a strong foundation. And like I said, there's a big surprise at the end, just beautiful, nice surprise. So let's just get into the first principle of where true Egypt is located. And I'm doing this live, but I'm also showing you recordings. It's sort of a mix of two things. So just bear with me in case I make any mistakes, but you know I'm going to try my hardest here. The West is determined for destruction. Enoch tells us the West is determined for destruction. It has a heart to destroy itself, and Yahweh will destroy it. He says he hides our sin as far as the east is from the west. This is the key to the very salvation of Yasharel. There's separation from the sin and Hamitic and Assyrian captors. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. The old world is the new world again. The old world is in the west, and this is where all civilizations sprung from relating to the fall. And this is what the book of Adam and Eve tells us about the west. First book of Adam and Eve 1:8. Again, also because Elohim is merciful and of great pity and governs all things in a way that he alone knows, he made our father, Adam, live in the western border of the garden, because on that side, the earth is very broad. 2 Ezra 7:13 says, then were the entrances of this world made narrow and full of sorrow and travail. They are but few and evil, full of perils and very painful. For the entrances of the elder world were wide and sure and brought immortal fruit. If then they that live labor not to enter the straight and vain things, for they can never receive those that are laid up for them. And so what we know about the West is it's very broad and it's very wide. And in the olden times, people had prosperity and righteousness. It was a sign of their righteousness, but now more so, suffering is. Matthew 7:13 through 14 says, enter ye at the strait gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go thereat. And of course, we have many streets in the West called Broadway. Egypt was in the West. Babylon proper is the West. So what is the old world? Is the new world, West world. The buildings and structures in the West that confirm that it actually is Egypt. According to an 1858 Raftsman's Journal in the Antiquities in America, it says, strange as it may appear, America abounds in antiquities so extensive, so beautiful and majestic as to rival those of Thebes or Nineveh. Ruins of ancient cities of immense extent, fortifications, mounds, and pyramids, temples with walls built of hewn stone showing a refined taste in architecture and adorned with human figures beautifully executed, large altars ornamented with hieroglyphics probably giving a record of those who reared them, but which no man has been able to decipher. Remains of ancient palaces with beautiful specimens of sculpture and painting with many other marks of ancient greatness prove to us that this is not a new world. but that a powerful empire existed at a very remote period in time, teeming with a population highly skilled in arts and in a state of civilization far beyond anything we have been led to conceive of the Aborigines previous to the discovery of the continent by the Europeans. These structures are going to be superior to anything that you would find in Europe or created by the Europeans. So let's get into it. And so what are some of the things that we see in the West? Well, in the West, we see in Ohio this giant serpent mound. Look at the size of it. It's a giant serpent under rock. So this could actually be a dead giant serpent. And on top of it, they've done this whole hedge of a serpent on top of a serpent. So it's like a serpent on a serpent. You see the vastness of it. And of course, I've shown you guys the Grand Canyon videos and the things they have in them. They have statues of Shiva. And I was like, well, what is this Shiva doing here? You heard me in the videos. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. This can't be right. It looks very staged. Well, maybe not. It looks like a temple here, a pyramid. They call this the Isis temple. We see some kind of Buddhist statues. Menkare, King Akhenaten's son here. Very Asian, right? So let's talk about these ancient structures that the people dwelt in. And so here's probably the part that's a little less technical, a little more exciting. And these are these ancient geostructures. And of course, you see the Hamites dwelling in them comfortably. And those are pictures from America by John Ogilvy. So according to ancient monuments of North and South America, it refers to the people who had built them, the Toltecas, or the American Atlantes, as being quite a different people from the later Mexican tribes, and that their monuments are equal to those of Egypt, Syria, such as with colossal and even cyclopean structures, which, is pretty obvious. And it says, I have traced them in America from Missouri to Chile, but their central seats and empires were in Mexico. Or Quito. And their great temple at Otulam, or near Planake, was equal to Solomon's temple. Their mythology was quite peculiar and Asiatic. It was quite peculiar and Asiatic. Their main deity was Hun Aku. Hun, Attila the Hun. Ham, Hun, the Hun people. First cause, comparable to Anuki, the Syrian Cybele. Okay? So you see this Asiatic influence, okay? Meaning like Chinese or East Indian, and Hun, Aku. So Aku often means brother in Hebrew. It can also mean the Anunnaki. So we're talking about the giants, right? Because remember, in a lot of the images of the Egyptians, they have the gods, the giants, right there with them, the small people and the great. Egypt was part of the Solomonic Empire, Solomon's Empire, okay? And its golden age, the Orion age, the golden age. And it's not actually, as I've said before, the land of Ham. This is the land of Shem. And we confirmed that the pyramids were built before 1100 BC, the Egyptian ones. And they had no monoliths, they had no pillars, and they had no Sanskrit or drawings or inscriptions on them. The three pyramids of Giza existed on their own, two of them having just the two sets of three pyramids at either of their sides, okay? All other pyramids were set up many centuries, if not thousands of years later, and that includes all the images of the Egyptian gods. We also noted that the lion, the riddle of the Sphinx is that the Sphinx was not a sphinx, that it was actually a lion. Because the Sphinx, the head of the Sphinx, was much newer, much younger, and nowhere near as worn as the body of the lion. And there are geologists who have proven this. The Egyptologists say contrary, but the geologists are like, no, this stone is much older. So the Sphinx would have more likely been a lion, because Israel doesn't mix different seeds together. That's what the nations do. We also found that there was a habit among the people of this region to wear a lion's mane for a headdress, a lion's mane. So that's where this lion's mane shape comes from. But of course, it was more likely originally a lion, the Lion of Judah, as inscribed on one of the walls here. Abram brought sciences to the Egyptians, and that is according to Josephus in chapter 8, that Abraham had communicated to them arithmetic and delivered to them the science of astronomy. For before Abram came into Egypt, they were unacquainted with those parts of learning, for that science came from the Chaldeans into Egypt, and from thence to the Greeks also. Jacob is the former of all things. Abram gave them the centimeter, the millimeter, the meter, the cubit, and the golden ratio.
Fresh water from the Nile. They measured one drop and then another. They were all the same size. The diameter of the drop of water on a waterproof surface, like granite or alabaster, is constant. It measures 1 centimeter. The meter is a universal unit because it is measured on water. Water is the only material that is stable. All other materials or objects are difficult to measure, or else they vary over time. The architecture of the entire universe is constructed with this unit. They named this small unit the royal finger. 10 drops of water or 10 royal fingers equals 1 royal hand. 100 drops of water, so 100 royal fingers or 10 royal hands, equals 1 royal leg. The royal finger was called the centimeter, the royal hand the decimeter, and the royal leg the meter. From this experience, they also deduced the decimal system. From then on, all of Egypt would have as a standard a universal constant, the royal cubit, the golden ratio. Pi, the golden ratio, the royal cubit, the whole panoply of sacred geometry with the meter. The Egyptians knew the Fibonacci sequence in the golden number thousands of years before him and called it the addition sequence.
When we examine the symbol for house, Bayet, it is this golden ratio. So this is the family, the tent, the house, the earth. This is the code for everything. And this is why Hebrew is a pictographic language, because it speaks practically to reality. Meter had so many biblical references. All of these measurements did. And some of the primary ones was the meter, which is called mitznefeth, or official turban or diadem for the high priest. And so I give a lot of references, but one of the main ones was Leviticus, and he shall put on the holy linen coat, and he shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and shall be girded with a linen girdle, and the linen mitre. With the linen mitre he shall be attired, and these are the holy garments. Therefore shall he wash his flesh in water, and so put them on. And so you can imagine it was about 1 meter long, and it would be wrapped around the head as a turban or a headband and whatnot. Also, there were holy measurements for buildings. A window shalt thou make to the ark, so this is at the time of Noah. In a cubit shalt thou finish it above. So this is before the Egyptian Empire. Okay? Also in Ezekiel, it says, and behold, a wall outside the house and round about, in the man's hand a measuring reed of 6 cubits long by cubit, and a hand breadth. So he measured the breadth of the building 1 reed. Now here in Ezekiel, in these various verses, including Revelation, it says the length of a reed is given as 6 cubits, each being about a cubit and a palm or hand's breadth. Okay, so those are the measurements that were just described to us in Egypt. Cornerstone, a key Hebraic concept developed possibly from the Egyptian captivity, but principally and probably first related to Hamashiach, Yahusha.
They pour the white concrete, and about 30 minutes later the mold is filled. Today we call this process formwork construction.
So stubble or straw was basically crushed rock used to make formwork bricks. This was the origins of masonry, which the Hebrews had originated, and they used it when they were in Egypt to build their structures and their own pyramids at Giza, of course, the Israelites. And so here's some scriptures that prove it. Exodus 5:12. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw. The word is teben, and it's from the word H1129 in Strong's, and it says straw, threshing, or chaff, but the origin is said to be doubtful, but not improbable, and it really denotes building material. And then we have another example in scripture where Job says the arrow cannot make him flee, sling stones are turned with him into stubble. So stubble is another word for ground up stone, and so that's how we know that it was actually ground up stone that was used to make a cement-like substance to construct the pyramids for Solomon and the pyramids for the Egyptians.
The Grand Canyon is not just an American sightseeing location. There are strange and dark secrets that lie within. Some have even encountered a gateway to a hidden world. In 1909, the Arizona Gazette published an article about an expedition funded by the Smithsonian. This expedition was led by a man named G.E. Kincaid, and he discovered an ancient underground city within the Grand Canyon. But here is where it gets interesting. This city was filled with artifacts from ancient Egypt, hieroglyphs, statues, and even a pyramid. How did ancient Egyptian relics end up in Arizona over 5,000 years ago? Is it possible that they had access to flight? But it gets even stranger. The Smithsonian seized all the artifacts and shut down any further exploration, which led to 90% of the Grand Canyon being restricted till this day. The canyon is home to numerous hidden caves and tunnels, many holding ancient treasures and technologies. Many adventurers used to report seeing strange lights and sounds coming from these depths. The Hopi tribe, a tribe native to the region, speak of sacred underground cities known as the Sipapu. These cities are believed to be gateways to the underworld, holding powerful energies that should never be disturbed. All this makes us wonder, what else is hiding in the Grand Canyon?
Also, where the X marks the spot in Illinois is actually Egypt, and it was the original Egypt. It is known as Little Egypt, and in that area in Kentucky are a whole bunch of mounds or old pyramids. It was a gigantic pyramid city. And of course, people look back on it and they say, oh yeah, this is how the natives lived on top of these mounds, and that was their culture, mounds. But really, these are huge Egyptian cities right here in Illinois and Kentucky. A friend of mine just said, I'm driving on top of pyramids. She lives there in Kentucky, so she sent me some photos and information. And so that is Egypt. And if you actually walked directly east of there towards Africa, you're going to end up at the Riyadh Tower of Babylon, which was on the African side. And so indeed, family, once again, America is Egypt. And this is, of course, all built around a 400-year prophecy. I will take you to Egypt in ships again. And there would be an exodus once again from Egypt. So America is Egypt, and X marks the spot, and it is in this sign that the eagle will once again conquer, but this time from Russia. And in addition to all of this, this is where the Madrid fault line is. And so remember, there's going to be earthquakes, there's going to be the sun turning black, the moon to blood. This is why they have been promoting the colony of Egypt as Egypt proper with this revelation in technology. But I want to know what's under the structures in America. But let's check out the evidence that shows us that that colony of Egypt is not Egypt. So now Hiram Abiff, the widow's son, is the one who helped Solomon build his palaces. But Solomon built many palaces, and his son began to basically enslave the northern kingdom in order to continue to build more and more structures. And obviously, Naphtali was from the northern kingdom. He was the widow's son of Tyre, a Tyrian. And Tyrians were typically, into the whole Egyptian Estenism. As I keep saying, the main reason for the split between the northern and southern kingdom historically, and the northern kingdom being carried away captive, was the many palaces that Solomon built, as well as the high places of the northern kingdom. And so this is what can return us back to the idea that the northern kingdom likely actually built these pyramids. In 1 Kings 12, this is how the split happened. Rehoboam sent to Shechem. Now, Rehoboam is the son of Solomon, all right, at his death, the heir. He sent for all Israel to come to Shechem to make him a king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard about it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now, therefore, make thou the grievous service of thy father and his heavy yoke, which was put upon us, lighter, that we will serve thee. Now, Yah had told Jeroboam that he would become king because the kingdom would split, because he was more faithful to Yah than Solomon, who went astray because of what? His strange wives and multiplying wives and concubines. So he had broken the law on 2 points: multiple wives and strange wives. And so that drew his heart away after other gods. And Jeroboam actually had to flee from Israel, because Yah told Solomon through the prophets that his kingdom would be split and Jeroboam would become king. So Jeroboam ran to real Egypt, not this Egypt. He was staying sequestered away with the Egyptians in America. And when Solomon died, he returned, and he was the official leader of the northern kingdom. And this was the request that he made to Rehoboam, the new to be crowned king of the southern kingdom, and really all of Israel. And he said to them, Depart for 3 days, is what Rehoboam said. Then come again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do you advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him and said, If thou wilt be a servant unto these people this day, and will serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, which stood before him, and said unto them, What counsel do you give that we may answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father did put on us lighter? And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus thou shalt say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now, whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father has chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So basically, these young men were very arrogant. They didn't think about the fact that, hey, the whole northern kingdom could depart. He wasn't given the prophecy by Solomon. And of course, this is the difference between the king's servant versus the arrogant king. And we're all as Israel to be servants, right? And so Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the third day as the king had appointed, saying, come to me again on the third day. All right, notice it's the third day. That's a day when a kingdom rises, when Yahusha rise, when Israel was supposed to go up to the mountain and become the kingdom of priests on the third day. So these guys come on the third day. And of course, the king answered the people roughly and forsook the old man's counsel that they gave him and spake to them after the counsel of the young man, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips. I will chastise you with scorpions. Therefore, the king hearkened not unto the people for the cause from Yahuwah, that he might perform his saying, which Yahuwah spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam son of Nebat. So all Israel saw the kingdom hearkened not unto them. The people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. So basically, that's the kingdom split. And I believe Jeroboam wound up ruling all of Israel, and for this reason. And then it split later on and he built high places. He built high places, which we're going to get to in a minute, so that people wouldn't return to Jerusalem to worship. Yeah, they would worship strange gods. And so I want to return again to Dan and his allocation of land. And so, of course, Dan's symbol of the eagle and the snake was the northern standard towards the north. And I have put to you many times that his kingdom, his land allotment, was basically where we call Egypt today. And that's also where the Alexandrian libraries were, and Joppa, the land of Japheth, is, and all the shipping. Where really the land of the Philistines, the colony of Japheth and the colony of the Egyptians was in Dan's land. And that's why he got taken so easily in the northern kingdom into spiritual idolatry. So let's find out how Dan prepared for this. What does Dan do exactly to prepare the ground for Egypt to be built in his land? He has a Levitical priest who serves an idol for a wealthy man named Micah, become their priest and sets up an idol. And so Judges 18:1-4, in those days there was no king in Israel. When they were by the house of Micah, they knew the voice of the young man, the Levite, and they turned thither and said unto him, who brought thee hither? And what makest thou in this place? What hast thou here? And he said unto them, thus and thus dealeth Micah with me, and hired me, and I am his priest. So he's making idols for this guy named Micah. So they asked this young man, where they shall prosper. And he says, wherever you go. And so they end up taking Zidon of the Sidonians. And they come back and they say to him, hold thy peace, lay thy hand upon thy mouth, and go with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for thee to be a priest unto the house of one man, or that thou be a priest unto a tribe and a family in Israel? And the priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and the teraphim and the graven image and went in the midst of the people. So we have priests, definitely family Levites, who just are so whored out and just go after the strange gods. So here's the two of them together doing this foolishness. So anyway, chapter 31, and they set them up, Micah's graven image, which he made all the time that the house of Elohim was in Shiloh. So that the house of their false god, their fake god, was in Shiloh. But I don't know, I guess maybe Yah has some grace on them, but not later on, because what happens later on is that when we get to Jeroboam, a golden calf is built in Dan by Jeroboam during his reign to keep Israel from returning to the king of kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem to worship Yahweh. And so it is this combined effort that leads them all. So he leads Israel into going with strange women, idolatry, setting up an idol, and finally splitting the kingdom. He does all of those. So this is why he's the 13th tribe in a bad way. So what got Dan into so much trouble? Well, we'll start with the lots. That was one of the first things. He was born of the bondwoman. He was born of a concubine. Even though she was a Shemite, she was still a bondwoman. And he was the firstborn of a bondwoman outside of the covenant marriage of Leah and Jacob. All right. So similar position to Ishmael being born of Hagar, right? So, but let's look at his geographical position in the kingdom in Joshua 19 and 40. In the seventh lot, 7 nations, 7 churches. Is it going to be good or bad? Or is it going to be both? Which is what the judgment and blessing is explaining in his literal name when Rachel says, Yah judged me, but he blessed me. All right. So the 7th lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families, and their coastland of their inheritance was Zorah, Eshtal, Ereshmeth, Shalaban, Ahalon, Jethalah, Elon, Elon Musk, Timnatha, and Ekron, and Eltekah, and Gebethon, and Balath, and Yehud, and Bene Berek, and Gathrimmon, okay, and Mahakron, and Rakon, and the border before Yapho. So, or Jaffa, so Japheth. It means beauty, and it refers to Japheth. This is a major port. And the coast of the children of Dan went out too little for them. Therefore, the children of Dan went up to fight against Lechem or Lechem. And this is a place in Palestine, and took it and smote it with the edge of the sword and possessed it and dwelt therein and called Lechem Dan after the name of their father. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families, these cities with their villages. All right. So you see, he is thoroughly immersed in the Canaanites. I mean, the Canaanites had taken over the land, but these are kind of their lands along the sides of the north, because his station within the camps of Israel was in the north. So Judah was on the east. I think Reuben was on the south. Joseph was on the west when they traveled or moved or fought war, and Dan was on the north. So he's right up against all of these wicked kingdoms in the north. And if you look at some of these names, I'm not going to go deep into all of them. I'm going to focus a little bit on Japheth. So we see Elon and Timnathah. So Elon was one of the Canaanites, and Timnah was one of the daughters that Edom married, daughters of Elon, the Canaanite. All right. So he's right now, he's having to deal with Esau and the blessing that's going to come on Esau to overcome Jacob. All right. So that's a problem. There are some other names here. If I study this could be a whole study all on its own. And you know me, family, I could just take you. But look, Gath Ramon. So Gath relates to the word Goth, and we're going to make this connection later. So hold on to that. So Gath Ramon. So these are basically the giants of Japheth, the Gomorrhians, like the Tubal Canaanites. Because remember, Japheth has his own Canaanites in Tubal Cain. Okay. So let's talk about Joppa, the port city of Jerusalem, or it was a port for the kingdom of Jerusalem, the kingdom of Israel, right? But it was in the land of Dan. And Joppa refers to Japheth or Yahweh. It means beautiful. That's what Japheth means. Okay. It is a natural harbor on the Mediterranean between Egypt and Akko. All right. So this is telling you something. Not Egypt, the true Egypt of the West, but the colony of Egypt in the land of Africa. This is telling you that Dan's land is connected to Egypt in Africa, but it's on the Mediterranean coast. This is giving you a sense of the scope of the land of Israel. And it was one of the key Egyptian administrative cities in Palestine until the time of the Israelite invasion. So what it says here is that Joppa remained one of the key Egyptian administrative cities in Palestine from that time until the Israelite invasion in the 13th century. So what this could mean was that this Egyptian structure, power structure, may have been built before or after the Israelites came there. But the reason why I believe it could have been after was because this is why the kingdom was clave in two, because Solomon was requiring that palaces be built for his Egyptian and Gentile wives. And this is what the 10 tribes do. We know that Naphtali was actually the one who built the temple in Israel. He was the widow's son of a Tyrian, all right? And he was probably somewhat skilled or aware of the magic, all right, of the Tyrians. So this would be the building of Egyptian structures. These are the kinds of things that in slavery and captivity, the Israelites had already built, was these kinds of power structures. And in addition, remember, Jeroboam set up a high place. And there's all these other precepts that I've already mentioned for Dan to want to and be motivated to do this kind of thing. Excuse me, because he had a tendency to set up idols. Joppa was described as being surrounded by beautiful gardens, and her craftsmen were specialists in working metals, wood, and leather. At the time of Joshua's conquest, the city was assigned to the tribe of Dan in Joshua 19:46. The tribe of Dan was soon displaced by invading Philistines. Joppa then became their northern seaport, but it was not one of the major political centers. After David's conquest of the Philistines, Joppa was restored to Israel. Solomon made it part of the reception for the cedar logs and rafts brought down from Lebanon, all right, to build the temple, but also the palaces of his Egyptian wives, all right, for the use in new temple palace complex he was building at Jerusalem in 2 Chronicles 2 and 16. In Jonah 1 and 3, the prophet Jonah was commanded to preach to Nineveh, but he refused to obey and said he went to Jaffa and boarded a ship sailing to Tarshish. So it's associated with Javan and Tarshish, so that means the Turks, right? And it says historic episode is best dated about the time of Salmanasar Tiglath-Pileser, so Prester John, when he invaded Philistia or Philistine, capturing Giza and its major fortress. Jaffa must have fallen to him in this campaign, is what is suspected. So this is in the region of Egypt, and what they call Egypt today was actually called Cairo when Esau reigned over it. All right. So Sennacherib came to Palestine to put down a revolt against his Assyrian empire. Hezekiah of Judah was one of these rebels. Sennacherib's record of this campaign, Jaffa is one of the cities he destroyed. It is not known when the city was rebuilt, but by the time of Ezra, this commercial port was again in service, and the cedar logs from Lebanon were needed for the new temple at Jerusalem. They were rapted to Joppa. This is called the land of Dan, and this is where they were brought in. Alexander Great favored the city and changed its name from Yaffo, which means beautiful, Japheth, beautiful, to Joppa. So Alexander puts in the Japhetic J in replacing the Yod, the Yaffo from Japheth. Japheth should be pronounced Japheth, right? After Alexander's death, the city was fought over by his successors on several occasions. In 301 BC, Ptolemy took the city. Jaffa remained Egypt until 197 BC. It then became part of the Seleucid Empire. So they're calling that shipping place in Egypt, right? They're calling that Jaffa or Japheth. So Egypt was where the port of Japheth is. When you read about the Maccabees, they're dealing with this port at Jaffa. And remember, the Greeks named what I believe is the Jordan, the Nile. So they Egyptified it. When you read about the Maccabees, they're dealing with this port at Jaffa. Now, because of the city's continued hatred of him, Herod built a magnificent new port at Caesarea, 40 miles north of Jaffa. Okay? Jaffa was one of the earliest cities to have a Christian congregation, which would make sense because it is a city of Japheth. And it is most famous for Tabitha or Dorcas. She's the one who prophesied over Yahusha and saw him when he was born. Peter was at Jaffa visiting the home of Simon the tanner, where he was called to preach to the centurion Cornelius. Peter was in Jaffa when he got the vision about accepting and receiving the Gentiles. All right? So we see how key this area around Egypt is in the land of Dan. Now, it was replaced by a Roman army camp in AD 68. Some of the Roman coins struck in honor of the Romans' victory over the Jews portray the destruction of the Jewish fleet at Jaffa. All right, that was a lot, but this is I'm pointing to the importance of the Philistines and their connection to the Gentiles. So the tribe of Dan was associated with the law and keeping the law, but also with seafaring and idol worship and being aligned with Esau and the Gentiles. Samson worshipped other deities. The tribe of Dan stole an idol from Micah and set it up in their city in Judges 18. And a golden calf was built in Dan by Jeroboam. And there they set up idol worship to keep the northern kingdom of Israel from practicing the law with the kingdom of Judah. This is why I believe now that Egypt is the high places that Jeroboam built. And I've been saying that for a long time, saying that that was the northern kingdom, the land of the 10 tribes, but clearly we have the evidence here. And the other reason for that is because America is true Egypt with over 1,000 pyramids called mounds. The land of Dan went from being Dan's land to that of the Philistines, then Joppa of Japheth, and eventually Egypt as it is known today. And the name Egypt dates back to Egypt proper in America. Israel's difficulties with Gaza are infamous. Philistia, the ancient geographical area that contained modern-day Gaza, is the southern portion that was a trouble spot for the inhabitants of the land of Israel from long ago, during the time of Samson and Deborah in the book of Judges. Now, here's the tie-in between Egypt and Babylon, and tying back to Egypt and Babylon actually being the same thing. All right. So Egypt in America is the original Babylon, the former Babylon, and the current Babylon, although Babylons were established in the land of Israel. So in Jasher 27, Nimrod is killed by Esau, who inherits the mantle of Babylon and Egypt by getting the very valuable garment of Nimrod, which he wears. And then his 12 sons create a counterfeit kingdom, and they mix in with Egypt and all nations. They become the Assyrians, the Assyrians. Now, according to this book on Babylon, Babylon of Egypt, Cairo is the land of Edom. So Edom set himself up in Cairo. And that is where they called the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Pyramid of Esau, according again to the Babylon of Egypt, page 222. Now, the Encyclopedia Britannica of 1771 says Cairo was also known as On. So that's how Egypt ties back again to Babylon. On is tied to the word Babylon. And of course, Babylon was an ancient city in Egypt. And so Cairo was called Babylon. It was called On, and it was called Cairo, but it was originally the land of Dan. But here's how On again ties back to the original Egypt. The Jones Dictionary of the Old Testament says the proper name of On was an Egyptian city in Egypt proper. And we know this because in Genesis 41 and 15 of the Bible, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, is the daughter of a priest of On, or a priest of Heliopolis. All right. And Jasher 49 and 36 says, the king sent to Potiphera, the son of Ahiram, priest of On. Later on in the book of Judges, the tribe of Dan hires a Levitical priest to set up an idol in the land of Dan. And they actually use the ephod and the teraphim, and they take a graven image and set it up as a golden calf in the midst of the people. And this is Micah's graven image, which he made all the time that the house of Elohim was in Shiloh. And a golden calf was built by Dan by the king of Jeroboam during his reign to keep Israel from returning to the kingdom of Judah to worship Yah. And so I don't think it was just a golden calf. I think it was actually these pyramids of Giza. And these pyramids of Giza may have actually also been, I theorize, pyramids that Solomon built, or places of worship that Solomon probably conspired to build for his Egyptian wives. And so hence, family, the quote from scripture says, now the angel of Yahuwah spoke to Philip, saying, arise, go toward the south along the road which goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. And so he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians, who had charge over all her treasury. And the reason why I'm quoting here is because Gaza is Giza. All right. And even the Ethiopians were said to have lived there for a while. Edom is said to have lived there for a season, and he called it Cairo. Now, the Edomites are clearly mixed in with the Ethiopians as well. The Ethiopians are a mixed multitude, chocolate style, of each of the sons of Noah.
The architect Hemiunu and Khufu go up symbolically to unveil the Pyramidion. The Pyramidion is revealed. The crowd shouts with joy. 20 years of hard work for their king is coming to an end.
You'll hear from the indigenous Americans as well as the 10 tribes that there was a dispute after the death of King Solomon, that he had taxed the northern kingdom too much in work, in building for him. And he had built actually a kingdom for his Egyptian wife. And the northern kingdom were very well known to be brick makers. And the language used for brick making, it's actually not brick making with provender made of straw. The material used is actually stone, broken up stone, not straw. And of course, this is what split the northern and southern kingdom, was that the southern kingdom was forcing the northern kingdom to make these bricks for buildings and structures like this.
The pyramid was oriented east, relative
to Eden and Yah.
Orientation to the east automatically indicates all directions with the same precision. Indeed, the Egyptians did not care about the north. There was nothing in the north apart from primitive peoples. The south was sacred to them because it was where they came from, their roots. It is for this reason that cities were then built up the Nile, to be closer to their origins.
The truth is that the Most High will descend in the south.
The first quarter is called the east, because it is the first, and the second the south, because the Most High will descend there. Yea, there in quite a special sense will he who is blessed forever descend.
The position of the sun is exactly facing the king's sarcophagus. There is much debate over whether the pyramids are tombs, and whether the sarcophagi are intended for bodies.
We also established that the pyramids were power generators, not tombs, because according to this ancient document from the Egyptians at the time when the Hebrews left them and they were in a state of chaos, they say that none shall sail northwards to Byblos today. What shall we do for cedar trees for our mummies, with the produce of which priests are buried and with the oil of which chiefs are embalmed, as far as Kishfu. So in other words, they didn't bury people in pyramids, and here's more confirmation.
Many of the sarcophagi were empty when discovered. Almost all mummies, whether they are important figures in society or not, have been found in wooden coffins and not in granite sarcophagi.
We look at these people coming up from the south, perhaps towards Central and North America. We can see they look very black, and they were likely other Shemites who were in the Brazilian regions.
Ever since scientists have been studying the Great Pyramids there at Giza, there has been speculation that they may have been energy generators, some kind of power plants. And of course, the mainstream Egyptologists are saying, oh, these are just simple tombs for pharaohs.
But the Great Pyramid has the precision of a machine, and so when you consider it as a machine, you see that there are certain functions that each part of the pyramid performs. The subterranean chamber is evidence itself, and it has been demonstrated by an engineer by the name of John Cadman, who created a model of the subterranean chamber, and by feeding water in it, the chamber itself seems to cause some very unusual reactions in the pyramid.
The water would rush down the shaft of the Great Pyramid down to the subterranean chamber, which was about 330 feet. It would bypass a valve, and then the valve would slam shut, and it would cause a shock wave to be sent up the Great Pyramid itself, and then it would shoot towards the ceiling that was directly below the King's Chamber. It's a freestanding granite tuned room. and it would cause that to resonate at a specific frequency.
The granite is the same material that you would use in a microphone or a telephone. It vibrates through the introduction of sound, and it emits electrons. Well, you take that phenomenon and you control it inside the Great Pyramid, then you have a machine that can vibrate that granite as much as an earthquake would vibrate granite in the earth and create electromagnetic energy.
Christopher Dunn's theories indicates that the Great Pyramid was sending microwave signal. And in fact, studies of his working devices have shown that this probably would work. We could have been sending messages into space. It's very similar to the SETI program.
It is my suspicion, belief, and hypothesis that what they call the king's chamber or the sarcophagus relates very much more to the Sefer guess. Sefer guys. Now, I haven't checked the etymology, but in my spirit, I'm like, I wonder, and I hope I'm not wrong, and I hope y'all forgives me just for speculating on this, but I wonder if that's where they might have put something like the ark or the stones to create a geyser which sent the words of Yah out through the top of these light generators. In the worst case scenario, it would be where fallen angels or Rephaim would sleep to strengthen themselves at night, being in their dying state, like vampires. And these ley lines line up with both the largest pyramid in the world, which is in Mexico, and Stonehenge, which of course is in Britannia. And ironically, these are also ley lines that button, if you will, or connect or link, what we call the continent of Africa, which I say is Afaya, back to the center of the earth when we reverse Pangea and connected at Greenland. So those 3 points of great ley lines that were mentioned in the documentary I included in this teaching button the land of Shem back up into the center of the earth. Another thing that we looked at was we looked at the stars, and we looked in particular at the cluster Orion, which lines up with the 3 great pyramids. And the stars also speak of Israel. Their names were looked at in Arabic and Hebrew, and we learned that there was the constellation Kessel, which means strong one or hero, or Orion means Orion, in other words, light age, age of light, or golden age, or heaven. And of course, Betelgeuse is like Betelgeuse, so house of bread, house of the Jews. Analim and Regal and Messiah are also part of this star system, and they speak to the Messiah, the regal one, and of course Orion's belt is like the belt of truth, and there's supposed to be a scabbard or a sword hanging down as well. So it very much speaks to the nature and culture and prophecy of this being the kingdom of Israel. And so the greatest enemy of Israel is Esau, the Edomites. And Esau is the twin of Jacob. He was just hairy, but they both had kind of a red skin tone. And Esau, of course, mixed with the nations in unrighteousness, in particular the Canaanites. And Jacob also mixed with the nations in righteousness. So the majority of true Israel is chocolate or brown. Some are hidden. And Esau is both black and white also. But the majority in Africa, the ones who are running Africa and the greatest slave traders in Africa are the black Edomites. And so let's look at this Assyrian captivity and how the other nations who mixed in with Esau, Edom, took Israel captive, and how this helps us to define the 2 Egypts. True Egypt, North America, versus the colony of Egypt in the land of Israel. All right. So we know that the 10 tribes and even the southern kingdom was besieged by the Assyrians, but they didn't make it into the southern kingdom. However, the Assyrians did take the 10 tribes of Israel captive, not the 12. And they did actually go in 4 different directions. And one of the places they landed up, of course, was in the Americas. So let's go over that. The Lakish relief is a 2,700-year-old 3-dimensional wall relief discovered in the mid 1800s. And it is in the British Museum today, and it depicts the military siege and captivity of the Yahudians, the Jews, in the city of Lachish by the Assyrian army. 2 Ezra 13:40 says that the 10 tribes were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea, the king whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so they came into another land. So historically, in 721 BC, Assyria swept out of the north, captured the northern kingdom of Israel, and took the 10 tribes into captivity. From there, they became so-called lost to history. So what happened to them? Well, some of them actually, Ephraim and Manasseh did remain in the land, but they were scattered. And so first we're going to look at what happened to those who were taken into the West. You can watch more of my videos on the land of Shem, but South America, the Caribbean, is the land of Shem and the Assyrians. So they were taken captive into the West. And so we're going to see how this ties into building, just like we know the 10 tribes built, the 12 tribes, really the pyramids in Egypt. We also know that they built still more buildings in the West. Shem was the firstborn son of Noah, out of whom the Israelites came. And Shem had a second son. He had Elam, and his second son was Ashur. And that is the father of the Assyrians. So the first mention we have of the Chata as Assyrians, there is a Chata tribe in America, and they are Assyrians. The Assyrians are Shemites, okay? So the descendants of Shem are the Assyrians and the Aramites and Ur of the Chaldees. Abraham came out of Ur of the Chaldees. So the first mention we have of these Assyrians who are in America is here in 2 Kings 17 and 24. It says, the king of Assyria, who is a black Shemitic king, brought men from Babylon and from Chata or Kutta, from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So this is where this Samaritan woman comes from. And so we can see here that this is a region which what the word for it is Kutta or Chata. This is a region from which the king of Sargon imported colonialists into Israel and to a location northeast of Babylon. And so again, the Assyrians are black Shemites. See here that Kuth or crushing is a place in Assyria. India and the Middle East was called Asia originally and was known as the East, and China, and that was known as the West. All right. So one of the districts in Asia where Salmanasar transplanted certain colonists into the land of Israel, which he had desolated. See Samaria. So the Samaritans mixed with the Israelites, right? From the intermixture of these colonists with the remaining natives sprung the Samaritans, who are called Kathites in the Chaldee and Talmud. Josephus places Katha in central Persia and finds here a river by the same name. Other Arabic and Persian writers place a town of the name of Katha in the tract near the Nahir Malka, or Royal Canal. You see all of these people in the buildings with the Ashtoreth poles on top. Okay, these are all Hamites and maybe some Mayans, so maybe some Shemites mixed together, living in these, occupying these buildings. And this is when Cortez came to have a ceremonious meeting with the king there, Montezuma. Montezuma was a Mayan. Okay, see, these are black people. These ones have kinky short hair. Their hair isn't long and stringy. Okay, so these are the Mayans. They're different from the other people. Again, we go back to the other people. Well, they've got thicker hair. They've got smaller heads. Okay, here's the Olmecs. They look very Negro-y as well, or sort of Chinoise, as the French would say. So here's Cortez meeting with these people. All right. Interview of Cortez with Montezuma in the city of Mexico. And this is the whitewash version that you get. So this is the one that says, oh no, he looked like the native Indian people now. He had long, straight hair. Now, the symbol of Ham is the feather of the eagle. That is the phoenix. That is also the symbol of Esau and America. So that's Egypt. Babylon is always the feathers. So they're in America. And you know they're in the land of Ham because his symbol is the eagle phoenix. Okay, and this is supposed to be Cortez meeting him. Cortez is a white guy. This guy's kind of a white guy, native, Mongoloid, and a white guy. This is the whitewash version. Okay? But this is the truer version from the time of John Ogilvy. And these people have shorter, kinkier hair. And Cortez is really, actually, when you look at all of the images of these navigators, they look like mixed race black people, okay, because they're from Spain. And of course, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, and his son Philip of Spain, King of Spain, were black. So, what did Montezuma have to say to Cortez when he came? His cousin, Cortez. His cousin, because the Cortez was an Edomite. He was Esau Edom. He was black, mixed race. And so he was meeting with his cousin, Jacob, one of the 10 tribes. It says, the unhappy Montezuma said of Cortez, the Spanish conqueror of Mexico, right? We know, said the unhappy monarch in his first interview with the Spanish general, by our books that myself and those who inhabit this country are not natives, but strangers who came from a great distance. So they're saying we're not really from this land, we're really the 10 tribes who came over here, and we call ourselves the Mayas because that's what our relative Joseph called himself when he came here. That the Egyptians called us the Mayas. Okay? So this was the beginning of the punishment of the 10 tribes of Israel for remaining in the land of Egypt. Remember, I showed you all the scriptures. Don't go down to Mitzrayim. Don't go down, Yah says a million times in scripture. Don't. What do? They go. Of course. So when we look at, this is from Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx. Good book to look at. And it goes into the Maya and the names and the words, and it also has that ancient map that I showed you guys in the other 2 videos, which is a more reliable ancient map of the world. Okay, in addition to, Mercator's maps and stuff, it's a reliable map from the Maya, or from at least America. I can't remember if it's actually the Maya who created it, but you can look it up in the book. But what it helps us do is to break down exactly who these people were, okay, because they were not Hamites. They may be mixed in with him a little bit. One of the things the scripture says is that my people are called by my name, and Yah's name is Yah. That's stated in Psalm Sing unto Yahuwah, sing praises to his name, extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name. Yah, rejoice before him. So his name is Yah, okay? His name is Yah. How do we know that? Let's look at it in the Hebrew. That's what we always got to do. His name is Yah. See, look, Y-A. That's the Yod. Of course, it looks like a house because that's a whole other story. But anyway, his name is pronounced Yah because that's the Yod. Okay, so Yah's people are called by his name. So the Maya are called by his name. Yah. Now, Yakskin, Yaks is, so when you're talking about Jacob, that was his name before Yah called him Israel, was Jacob, so it would be Yaakov. Okay? Or Yatsik. Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. So another, even Russian name for Jacob or Jack is Yatsik. So these are Yatsik's kin, because Isaac went to Egypt as well. So they were, oh, you guys are Jacob's, you're Isaac's kin. Isaac's kin, okay? Jacob's or Isaac's kin, okay? The scripture says that there is a root and branch of Jesse. So another word for the word for water in Hebrew is Mayim. So and these people were associated with the 7th month of the calendar. Now they were already practicing tabernacles. So Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all did tabernacles. Okay, before Moses, and that's in the 7th month. So these people were known as the people of the 7th month, the festival of tabernacles in the 7th month. And it means also vigorous sun, okay? And they're also associated with a tree that is the top branch. In scripture, if you guys want to watch my video on the giant tree, ancient tree, which is on this Into All Truth, it talks about the top branch. Okay? So they're the top branch of the earth, Israel, okay, and the land of Shem. But that's who these people are, and we know because of 2nd Esdras 13:43 talks about how these tribes, 10 tribes, came here to America. And there's also a picture of a branch in the map, and the scripture says that the root and branch of Israel is Jesse. Okay? Also, the 10 tribes were brick makers. And I want you to watch this video about the 10 tribes who still remain in America who were brick makers and their relationship to ancient structures.
At the time, there was a civilization that was far superior and more sophisticated than we could ever imagine. This civilization was systematically destroyed and hidden from our history books. This civilization used atmospheric energy to obtain electricity. Having free energy meant that humanity could focus on more serious endeavors, such as creation, creativity, love, and self-development. We see these same geometric, beautiful buildings all over the world, from Africa to China to Japan, to South America, to Europe. These buildings show us that we lived in an interconnected culture, a culture that understood the deeper levels of existence.
Okay. A lot of the truth was in the St. Louis Cathedral. Where did they put the records? A lot of the truth was in the Cabildo. Where is it? A lot of the truth is inside the tombs of the graves that's at St. Louis Cathedral, because they have a lot of Indians buried in there too. The bricks that built St. Louis Cathedral, my people made those bricks. The bricks that built the tomb in the older graves came from my people. those categories was not only able to blow debris, but it was also able to cover things up. Like Katrina blew a lot of rubbish that covered up things. Some of the sludge of this storm that I have to deal with is, am I this color as an Indian because of African descent? Or am I this color because this is the color of my ancestors? Well, the truth to that lies with the anthropologists, if they tell the truth. Because as they dig into the grounds, they have found people and they know they look like I look. But do they want to be politically correct as a white man to stay in standing with his white man? Or do he want to just let the truth lie in the basement? Because they folks all our business. So when they stole our identity, mispronounced it as Choctaw, they would come back into Lacombe, see our ways of living, and then they would mimic this back in Oklahoma.
Remember, the tribes of Israel always buried their family members in tombs, not in the earth, and they didn't burn them.
Another thing I'm fighting for is that we as a nation have a place of governing that is represented and recognized by the United States government. They say, well, that's federal recognition. I say, no, that's not. That is a God-given right, okay, a God-given right. Because even the people that's in churches of whatever race, they keep singing about them 12 tribes of Israel. Or they keep singing about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, everybody didn't come from Jacob.
That's right.
And if they did, that means everybody ought to be black. Because Jacob was marrying within his tribe. People that looked like him. He married his uncle's children. Okay? So, when we sit here, we won't even tell the truth about what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob look like.
Continuing the book of beginnings, another name for Egypt is Tamari. Ta is to drop, heap, deposit. Mary is inundation. Tamari is a land thus deposited. The vulgar English to ta is a child's word. It means deposit soil. Tamari reads the gift of the inundation, the gift of the goddess Mary, who has a dual form as Mary's in the south, or Mary Mehi. Egypt is also designated the land of the eye of the cow shedding an emblematic tear was a type of tying. Anyway, long story short, the Tamari Indians, who are the Amorite Indians, the same people who established the Federal Reserve, watch my video on that, those are indigenous to America, and America is Egypt, and that's their relationship to it. Paragraph here at the bottom of this slide, and it says, the true Assyrians named the West Arkaru, as the Egyptian king Akar is the mountain of the west and the entrance to the hinder place. Hinder place. I want you to remember that name. Hinder place. Hindu place. But a far earlier people in the land, the Akkadians, called the east Meruka. Okay, so this is in the book of beginnings. Okay, Meruka. Ameruka. So Amorite, More, Meru, Mer as in water, tons of different, and this is America, tons of different references. And here we see on the right a comparison between pyramids, okay? I'm showing you because this is the size of Khufu and Khafre, and there's supposed to be even bigger pyramids underwater beneath where Atlantis was off the coast of Gibraltar, okay? But El Mirador's top temple was way higher than Khafre or Khufu, 172 meters high. Okay, so, and it's a far older temple as well, so comparatively speaking.
What I'm looking at is sculpture that was created something like 2,000 years ago, and it's the most magnificent thing I have ever seen. I can tell you that I think this is probably the first of the 8 wonders of the world, the first of them. And if you want an experience, don't go to Stonehenge. Don't go to the Great Pyramids at Cheops or Giza. Come to Guatemala. Don't go to Giza. Come to Guatemala. and see this.
That pyramid, the largest pyramid in the world, is called Danta. So Dante's Inferno. Dante is a totally hellacious, underworld, satanic name or word. Just like how Pharaoh or fort is also related to Egypt, okay? And the empire inherited by Esau. So Dante and Pharaoh, all related to Esau and Egypt. You know, the free men on the land were the descendants of the Edomite Black Moors. So not the Hebrew Israelite Black Moors, but the Edomite Black Moors. And so he's looking a lot like Morgan Freeman. And as I said to you before, Edom inherited Egypt by killing Nimrod. So he inherited Babylon and Mitzrayim by killing Nimrod. In the book Ancient America, it talks about the people known as the Phoenicians were preeminent as colonizing navigators of iniquity. They were an enlightened and enterprising maritime people whose commerce traversed every known sea. And their operations extended to the Pillars of Hercules and into the greater ocean. The early Greeks called them Ethiopians, not meaning either black or men or Africans. So notice there's a difference between the two. The black men are the Negroes, the Africans are the Asians, the Hamites. And they said they went everywhere, establishing their colonies of commerce all over the coast regions and even to the extreme west. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is the time when Esau went into the west with the Tartarian tribes to hide and cover over all of these great pyramids of antiquity to set up Babylon. Okay, so that's what they were doing. You see this upper right-hand corner. There is some of the Arab Assyrians oppressing on the right, the Jacobian Israelites, right? You can tell by their hats, and then they're doing the bull sign curse on the left there. All right, so that's telling you who they are. And here's the Esau tribe of Ethiopia. And of course, we know that Esau inherited Babylon from Nimrod because he slayed Nimrod. So that put him in line for the Babylonian kingdom. So what does it say? History has knowledge of only a few of their later communities, the Sabaeans of southern Arabia, right? We know these are black people, all right? So this is black Esau, black Edomites. And it's not difficult to believe that communities of Phoenician or Ethiopian race were established all around the Mediterranean, even beyond the Strait of Gibraltar. So remember, the Mediterranean flooded, and then they were in those areas in ages quite as old as Egypt or Chaldea. Okay? So they are Chaldeans because Esau is a Shemite, right? And so some of them were Assyrians, some of them were Ishmaelites, some of them were Edomites, because he was married in with a lot of those groups of people. Why did the ancients say so much of a great Saturnian continent beyond the Atlantic if nobody in prehistoric ages had ever seen that continent? It was there, as they said, as we know it, but whence came their knowledge of it? And such knowledge has led them to describe it as larger than Asia, meaning Asia Minor. Where does the idea of Asia Minor come from? All right? Because what we know as Asia now is Asia Minor, because this is Asia Major, the United States and Canada and South and Central America, okay? According to the Foreign Review of the pyramids in the West, some of the pyramids, as we have said, are larger than those of Egypt. Some of them are different in their model, having somewhat of an Indian character, bearing strong affinity to the pyramidal temples still existent in Japan, right? Also China. See the works of Thomas Raffles. The Pyramid of Cholula exhibits a most singular identity with the model of the temples of Belus, Baal, right? Beelzebub, right? Described by Herodotus, and by which many scholars has been considered to be the scriptural Tower of Babel. Okay? So here we see a tie-in to Herod. And what did Herod decide to do? He tried to hide Israel. He was hiding the east from the west. He said there was a penalty of death upon anybody who tried to venture to the west after a certain period of time. Why? Because they were doing this gigantic cover-up, okay, and doing the switcheroo of names. El Mirador had up to 1 million inhabitants at its zenith between 300 and 100 BC. El Mirador and its surrounding neighborhoods would have been the largest city in the world at that time. To accommodate so many people, the city sprawled for over 2,500 square miles, okay? In a patch of a heart-shaped jungle that's referred to as the El Mirador Basin. The city center covered 14 square miles. That's 3 times larger than downtown Los Angeles. Okay? According to the Smithsonian, El Mirador, the lost city of the Maya, had one of the first freeway systems in the world and had the largest pyramid in the world. It was home to the Mayan civilization. A 40-meter wide causeway was one of the first freeway systems in the world. It was a 12-kilometer long road running from Mirador to Nakbe. So this was known as the Khan Kingdom. Okay? And it says El Mirador's inhabitants may have initially gone to the Caribbean coast, then migrated back inland, where they finally ended up in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. And then this emerged as a powerful city-state to rival Tikal in the 6th and 7th centuries. Mirador was known as in the pre-classics as the Khan Kingdom, meaning Khan meaning snake. And the Kalkamol referred to themselves as Lords of Khan. All right? And so we know these are the Khan. So Genghis Khan. So when you think of Genghis Khan being in India or being part of the Tartarians or the Khazars or the Serpent people, this is the connection that you have. All right? Khan is Cain and Ham. So when you're talking about them being in Europe and so on, when this is their original land, what does that tell you? These are literally the serpent people who later went to India. It talks about the Khazar serpent people and the Tartars. This is who they later became, or actually were when they returned to the land. So Khan is an Egyptian word for king. The article goes into multiple platforms that established this city, which was even larger than Los Angeles. So there were multiple stages of platforms of these cities and hundreds of pyramids within this city, way larger than Giza. So according to this book called The Views of Ancient Monuments, it talks about some of the largest periods in the world again, but what I want to point out here is that Mexican temples were called teocalli, or houses of God. So that's little g, and were very numerous, all right, with several hundred in each principal cities, many of them doubtless with very humble edifices. So they had a multiplicity and multitude of temples, especially in principal cities like we just saw, okay? There were tons of different pyramids and temples within that major city. They were solid masses of earth, brick, or stone, and their form was somewhat resembled the pyramidal structures of ancient Egypt. The bases of many of them were several hundred feet square, and they towered in height of more than 100 feet. So there were multiple terrace structures like these that formed a whole city, okay? There, and it even says the Temple of Vesta, there were said to be 600 of these altars or smaller buildings. So each building was like an altar. So that's multiple temples like the ones in Giza. So they were huge. But I'm pointing out to you about them being called Teocalli. In other words, so Teocalli, right? Kali was their god. So Kali is a major Hindu god corresponding with what? California. California. Okay? So I just want you to notice and remember the name California. And forgive me, Yah, for using the whole word. Forgive me for using the names of these false deities, but I know Yah understands the context I'm using them in. So just for educational purposes. And so I want you to remember, because we already saw earlier in some of those images of the fake gods in the destroyed area of the Grand Canyon, looking very similar. Again, a multi-armed god named Kali. Okay? And forgive me again, Yah, for saying that horrendous word. All the images you've been seeing is at Osingo. So iniquity, right? S-I-N-Go, right? And so there's an arch there at this place, and it features the winged globe of Egypt. Okay, now the word Egypt is a very late name, and it's actually a Greek name, and it incorporates the word Patha in it, which is really for Ptah, Japheth, okay? So when you look up Egypt, it says the Egyptians were from the French Egypt or Greek Egyptos, the River Nile. And now the River Nile, as I said in my other videos on my other channel, Live Light Well, which is shut down at the moment, it says that it corresponds to the Egyptian Hatkapata, okay, the creative god associated with Memphis or the ancient city of Egypt. But I actually think that that Egypt is a later word that came from the Greeks, and this is when Japheth takes over Egypt and takes over the identity of Israel as well. Okay, so just now I'm just asking that question in my mind: is this associated with Japheth, because it has the word Ptah in it, which is associated with Japheth. Now, why do I mention Japheth? Because we're going to see as we go into the next video about what the people looked like in these various stages of identities of the people of America, North America. We're going to see that eventually the white bearded man coming as Quetzalcoatl, or a kind of Jesus, right, is, a fake Jesus comes with his cross. And this is put forwards as the original religion right now, currently, by people like Kamuro Ahu, who I don't hate him. He provides so much information. There's so much stuff in here, and so this idea is put forwards of this Quetzalcoatl, right? The white bearded man. And so I suspect, and these are just my theories, right? That he is associated with Japheth and Santa Claus and everything from the north, the people of the north and Tartaria. But there was an original people with similar gods from the original branding, not the late rebrand of Quetzalcoatl, but the early brand, who were here previous to Ham. But we already know that Khan means king, okay? You see, when we look at Quetzalcoatl, the white bearded man, he is actually Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and he's really the fourth man because he's all of them combined. He's got the white beard, he's red-skinned, and he's black. So he is a mixed multitude, okay? He's Babylon. So just what I've shown you, Osinga in Chiapas is extremely tall with all those pyramids and terraces and multiple pyramids. And then this BBC article also talks about Cholula as the largest pyramid in the world. Beneath a tiny church hiding under tufts of grass, trees, and soil is an ancient pyramid of gigantic proportions standing 350 meters wide and 66 meters tall from end to end. The Great Pyramid of Cholula is the equivalent of 9 Olympic-sized swimming pools. An obscure temple no one's heard of, Cholula holds an impressive array of records. It's the largest pyramid on the planet, with a base 4 times larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza and nearly twice the volume. So it's not as high, but it's bigger. Never mind the largest pyramid, it's the largest monument ever constructed anywhere by any civilization to this day. And it's known as the man-made mountain, Tepeti. Thanks to the church on top, it's also the oldest continuously occupied building on the continent. And that's due to the church being on top. So it shows you what religion that church has been maintaining. All right, so that's something to think about. So once again, where's the largest pyramid in the world? The world's largest pyramid is Pueblo, Mexico, and it's the Pyramid of Cholula. It has a giant church on top. This is not a hill, it's part of the pyramid, the structure leading towards the top. It was built 2,300 years ago. It was ridiculously hard to find because it was buried under mounds. Cortez missed it when he invaded, and it wasn't rediscovered until 1910. Of course, we know why, because it was sought to be hidden. It's the largest monument ever constructed and is similar in structure to the Pyramid of the Sun. It's about 9 Olympic swimming pools long. It has almost twice the volume as the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it's 4 times as large. Notice the 6.6, 450 meters wide. There are over 400 human burials around the pyramid, which means it would be used for human sacrifice, being an ancient place of worship. Now they say in the 7th or 8th century it was abandoned. Now that's around the time the Tartarians took off, right? The Khazars through the Ashkenazis. Today it's an attraction for the keen eye. So you know my theory, it's over on my Live Light Wild channel on Esau going and destroying all of that land and really doing a big cover-up came out of me realizing that there was an area called Chichen Itza, which was both Russian and Assyrian, right beside the Mayan kingdoms. And it seems that they destroyed everything. It's not literally written in the documents I looked at, but I was kind of shown that in the spirit. So I did this video on Esau, how he kind of destroyed the West. So you can look at that on Live Light Well, but I'm going to rework it because I was still exploring and I've got a clearer picture on exactly what happened. I wasn't as clear at the time, but I do kind of show you his genealogy and so on. So it's interesting for that. Also, the Arabs enslaved the Russians initially. And I think it was actually at the point of the Great Reset that they finally came out of their full slavery to rule as the Gentiles in America, after all the mud floods and everything. The Tartarians were the wild men from the north used to tear down and cover up the Western Empire and then raise up in it as the Gentiles. And of course, this is why so many of them were probably actually Amorites. They probably were Gog and Magog, descended from giants. And that's who the Americans are when they say, I'm an American. That's really who they are. The Moors talk about the Moabites from the land of Moab who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. All right, and they were the founders of the current Moroccan Empire. I'm not so sure about that. With their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren, okay, who sojourned in the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across the Atlantis, even to present North, South, and Central America, Mexico and Atlantis Islands before the great earthquake that caused the Great Atlantic Ocean. So there was a great earthquake again that caused the Atlantic Ocean. There wasn't an Atlantic Ocean there before. It was 7 streams. It was the Riat Sea and it was the Ethiopic Sea or River Nile, okay? That's actually what I believe. Something like that, some combination thereof. The Moors had control of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. Okay, this is why the U.S. Marines sing of defeating the Moors from the halls of Montezuma, Mexico, to the shores of Tripoli. Okay, and what do we have connecting to that? What it seems like here is that maybe the Moors were a mix of all these people, because the scripture says the nations have taken a counsel against Israel, and this includes their own brethren. It's the worst are the Edomites, the Chaldeans, the Moabites, the Ishmaelites. These are all the people who were part of selling Joseph into slavery. So this is a grand replay of all of that, and those nations taking counsel against and conspiring against Israel. Okay, now we're talking about the lands of Ham, so that includes even the Hamites and the Egyptians. Okay, but sometimes a friend sticks closer than a brother, right? So there were a lot of unions that the Hamites had with Israel. Okay, but nonetheless, I don't want to get you confused, because you know my mind goes all over the place. I was made for this, as they say, right? So this particular time I was made for it. So yeah, so I just want you to see the connection between the Moabites, the Ishmaelites, all of them doing all of this work to confuse and hide the East and West and do all of these sorts of things. All right, I'm going to continue with this part. How are you guys doing? Should I continue with the rest of it, or are you guys like so like overloaded with information? There's just a little bit more to go. How far have we gone so far? Are you able to are you able to take more, fam? I'm going to keep going, and if I see you drop off, I'm going to stop. And maybe do part 2, but then maybe not. I don't know. Dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across the Atlantis, even to present North, South, and Central America. Okay, I'm not going to go through that again. Mexico. But basically, these are the Moabites, and this is how they tie into everything. They were part of enslaving Joseph, and they consulted and conspired with all the other nations to enslave the whole nation of Israel at this particular time as well. So long story short. And this includes of Ham. So that includes, yeah, so. All right, so we'll start here. And see the connection between the Moabites, the Ishmaelites, all of them doing all of this work to confuse and hide the East and West and do all of these sorts of things. All right, so we know that 10 tribes were taken to the west. They actually were split in 4 different directions and went to the 4 corners of the earth. Now, fam, we're getting close, though, because there is a nice, beautiful surprise ending. So it's nice. One of the places, which we already discussed, is America, where they have been in the Greek captivity, but first in the Assyrian captivity. And of course, the first captivity was the Egyptian captivity, where they were there, and where the dry bones of 11 of the 12 sons of Jacob still are buried. And so those dry bones have got to come out. But what about North Africa, aka Western Europe and Britain? According to Acts 29, this is also where the northern kingdom or the scattered tribes were also dwelling, both the northern and southern kingdom, according to the Apostle Paul. And this is in Acts 29, which is considered a controversial chapter. But when you actually do the math on the shipping and his journey, it's pretty interesting. I'm not going to do that in this study, but I might in another one, yeah, willing. So Acts 29 says, and Paul, full of the blessings of Mashiach and abounding in the Spirit, departed out of Rome, determining to go to Spain, for he had a long time proposed to journey thitherward, and was minded also to go from thence to Britain. For he had heard in Phoenicia that certain of the children of Israel, about the time of the Assyrian captivity, had escaped by sea to the isles afar off, as spoken by the prophet Ezra, and called by the Romans Britain. And Yahuwah commanded the gospel to be preached far hence to the Gentile and to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And no man hindered Paul, for he testified boldly of Yahusha before the tribunes and among the people. And he took with him certain of the brethren which abode with him at Rome, and they took shipping at Ostrium, and having the winds fair, they were brought safely into the haven of Spain. Why am I saying this? Because we are going to talk about structures in 2 seconds here that are built in Britain and that have the spires, as I have mentioned. So what we're doing here is we're connecting the enslavement of the 12 tribes, as well as the 12 tribes themselves, to the building of these structures. Now, they're not the sole builders, and it wasn't always that it was their desire to build them, but in some cases it was. But this is the connection that we're making here. All right, fam. Now, I want you to notice there that Paul went from Rome over to Britain. Now, Rome was in the west before it was moved to Constantinople over in the east. It was over here in North America. And when you actually read through this Acts 29, or actually the chapters before this, you see that his journey is about 30 days because they get delayed. And it actually takes about 15 days to sail from Gibraltar by ship today over to North America and in towards where Chicago is. Okay? It took them 15 days to 30 days in the Bible for Paul to go from the area of Jerusalem to Rome. So that ought to tell you something. So now he's going to go from that Rome in North America back to Britain to testify to the Israelites in Spain and Britain, the northern and southern tribes. Hope that makes sense. So watch this little video. And of course, this woman is going to try and tie this all into time travel as usual. But time is on the side of Israel because eternity is on the side of Israel. And only Satan is interested in changing times and seasons and reversing the clocks. Please ignore that. Let's get into it.
Big Ben, a reclaimed tower from a lost civilization. The official story is a house of cards, built in 1,859 inches during the Gothic revival. Please. That's not construction, it's rebranding. You're looking at an ancient resonator, a geopositioned frequency tower, built long before the Crown knew what to do with it. What they call Elizabeth Tower is a post-reset artifact, a functioning part of an old-world grid that we're not supposed to know existed. The fire of 1834 didn't destroy the old Palace of Westminster, it cleared the narrative. The Victorian reconstruction was just window dressing on something they didn't build. Big Ben wasn't born in the 19th century, it survived it. The true nature of the tower, a resonant device, not a timekeeper. Why build a 316-foot tall tower with a 13.5-ton bell and a 441-pound hammer? Why go through that unless it was meant to do something more than tell time? The tower channels vibrations through limestone, iron and sandstone, materials that respond electromagnetically and acoustically. Its design follows harmonic proportions, just like pyramids, cathedrals and ancient step towers across the world. The bell's deep resonance was likely tuned to Earth's frequencies, and when struck it sends pulses through the grid. Think about it. You're told it's just a clock, but would a government go through all that for a clock? Big Ben may have been part of an ancient planetary network of sound-based energy transmission towers. What we now call bells might once have been etheric tuning fork, manipulating frequencies that affected the environment, weather, or human consciousness. And now they just ring it for tradition, not because it serves a purpose, but because they don't remember what it used to do. Or worse, they do. The ritual zone, Parliament, is built on blood and stone. The Palace of Westminster, home to UK Parliament, is a ritual site It's not just political, it's a cult architecture, built directly on the River Thames, which itself mirrors the sacred Nile winding around ley lines. Westminster Abbey, nearby, is filled with Masonic geometry, crypts, and buried royals. The alignment of Big Ben's shadow has been rumoured to correspond with equinoxes, solstices, and solar crossings. It's not a coincidence that the heartbeat of British law ticks inside a tower once used to tune the earth. Power is richly amplified when it's grounded into ancient structures like this. And don't forget, the bell is named Big Ben not after a king, not after a god, but after Benjamin Hall, a man nicknamed Big Ben, which just happens to echo the Benjaminite tribes in biblical texts, the warrior caste of Israel. Coincidence or coded reference to ancient bloodlines? The tower survives when everything else falls. During World War II, German bombs obliterated buildings all around Westminster. Big Ben, untouched, as if something unseen protected it. Or worse, as if it was never meant to be destroyed. Structures like this don't just survive history, they anchor it. The same thing happens across the world. The Kremlin spires, the Washington Monument, the domes of the Vatican. They all look different, but they all radiate from the same blueprint. The tower's height, its placement along the river, all combine into a chrono-resonant device once used to sync time across space. Not just timekeeping, time control, the kind used by civilizations that understood reality as vibration, frequency, and geometry. Tartaria didn't build clocks, they built machines that kept the world in tune. And now, the elites sit inside the echo chamber of that forgotten machine, legislating beneath its silent song. Final revelation, Big Ben is a mask over a machine. They call it a clock tower, but that's like calling a pyramid a tomb. It's a lie told to distract you from what it really is. An ancient resonator older than the monarchy itself, a signal tower of the old world, pre-reset, pre-history, a silent frequency device dressed up in Victorian drag to hide its true nature. Big Ben wasn't built in 1859. It was inherited, rebranded, and contained. And what does that say about everything else around it?
So again, when truth is revealed, a bigger lie is exposed. And so she goes into time travel. This woman's also talked about, the African diaspora being true Israel. And then she is, mixes in aliens, of course. So here's some more speculation, alien speculation as usual, on the building of the pyramids, the gods they worshipped, and speculations on time.
We finally know what's underneath the pyramids, and these discoveries are groundbreaking. So Dr. Ramini Demi discovered these cylinder-shaped shafts under the pyramids. This is a more in-detail image of what they suspect it looks like. And instead of using like a robot to see what's down there, he volunteered to go down. It took him a week to reach the bottom, and he was shocked at how perfectly the stairs were built. Like, he could not understand how the Egyptians did it. At the very bottom, he found 2 rooms. One had a deep blue pool with bodies floating in it. And the bodies were so well preserved you could still see their eye colors. He had a weird urge to get in the water, but he decided to fight it. He did not want to get in, which I don't blame him. That does not seem safe. And people had already scanned the pyramids and found what they thought were like the top of these like long coils. An old Bible from 1863 even shows 4 pyramids instead of 3. And some explorers from the past have claimed that they found a hidden black pyramid, but no one ever believed them. And in this day and age, a lot of people believe that the pyramids weren't only just tombs. They think that they might have been used to create energy, or like power spaceships, or even teleport people. The pyramids also line up with the stars, which makes people wonder if the Egyptians were a lot more advanced than we thought that they were. Or maybe something not even human helps them create these. Now, there is no actual proof to any of this, but it's very fun to think about. What do you believe?
The agenda of the enemy is time travel so he can break into eternity. The agenda of the enemy is the aliens, the fallen angels will help you. And of course, there's this young girl says there's no evidence for this. Well, it's all throughout the Bible that the fallen angels are, quote, the aliens, and that they wanted to be worshipped like gods. And these power structures are somewhat connected to them and their high places. But so the last thing the Gentiles want to do is to say that the Black people living in that land, really the Israelites living in Africa today, built these pyramids and also built America, built these kind of spire structures, And This, of course, is tied to the 400-year prophecy, as well as you will go. The scripture says that you will go to Egypt again in ships. Israel was not in Egypt for 400 years, but only 215. And the second Exodus scriptures in Jeremiah, talking about Israel returning to the land. And I mentioned the dry bones in Ezekiel 37 because the actual bones of the leaders of the 12 tribes have to rise all over the earth and actually return from Egypt. So, spires is a Hebrew word commonly used in scripture, and it refers to the high naked hills or high places in Jerusalem. And it's a tapering conical pyramidal structure on the top of the building, typically a church tower, similar to a steeple, belfry, fletch, shakara, the continuation of a tree trunk above a point where the branch begins, especially in a tree of tapering form, a long tapering object. So you see these structures and towers. Israel was famous for having towers. It's high tower. This is why the scripture says Yahuwah is the high tower or strong tower. And so, and here's just a couple of references. Cut off thine hair, O Jerusalem, and cast it away, and take up a lamentation on high places. And this is the word for it here, H8205. For Yahuwah hath rejected and forsaken the generation of his wrath. Jeremiah 7:29. A voice was heard upon high places, weeping and supplications of the children of Israel, for they have perverted their way, and they have forgotten Yahuwah their Elohim. And so this is what they look like. And of course, we see these all over the world, according even to the scattering of Israel, the timing of it. Now, as I've said, usually another word for high place, which is much more popular, is Bama, as in Bema seat, which is associated with the Egyptians. And this is a high place of worship. And we know that it's compared to the Assyrian Bamatse, all right? And it's also Moabite. So Edomite, Assyrian, Moabite, we know they all sold out to the Egyptians, right? And became the Phoenicians, the phony Asians. And so this is like Alabama, the high place of Allah, another god. High place, ridge, height, Bama. And that's the name for a cultic platform, a high place, mountain, high places, battlefields, and even a funeral mound. So, even for sacrifice. And also mounds like hills, like what they have in America. And as I've said before, it's illegal to call any hill-like structure with pyramids beneath it a pyramid in America. It's actually against the law. So we see what they were trying to hide. We see what they're trying to do here. But here's a lot of the scriptures that refer to these high places, all right? They were used by a mixed population after the exile of Israel in Kings 17:11. And these places were destroyed by Josiah in First Kings. You can just check these scriptures out in Chronicles. And the worship on high places continued in Judah until the exile in 1 Kings 22:44 and 2 Kings 15:35. And Leviticus 26:30 says they are regarded as the reason for the rejection of Shiloh. And, obviously this is why King Solomon went astray. He started building these high places because he had many strange wives and built palaces for them. All right. And so he went after strange gods and he multiplied wives. So this is the reason for the fall of Israel. I think this is 1st or 2nd Kings 7:1. And King Solomon sent and took Hiram out of Tyre, the son of a widow woman, and he was of the tribe of Naphtalium, and his father was a Tyrian, a worker in brass and accomplished in art and skill and knowledge to work every work in brass. And he was brought into King Solomon, and he wrought all the works. So his land is right up against Tyre. And so that's near the Black Sea. and the Caspian Sea. So that's the geographical location of Naphtali's land. And it's not what we call Iran today. Today, Iran is in the right place, Medo-Persia. So that puts his land in what we call Israel and what we call Yemen and Arabia today. Judges 1 and 32 through 33 says, and Asher dwelt in the midst of the Canaanite who inhabited the land, for he could not drive him out. And Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Basemath. So those are the descendants of Edom who are Canaanite women, okay? Nor the inhabitants of Bethanak, and Naphtali dwelt in the midst of the Canaanite who inhabited the land, but the inhabitants of Basemath and Basenath became tributary to them. I just want to give you this last little bit of evidence of the Israelites who built America again.
Yemen, timeless, otherworldly. A land where 500-year-old skyscrapers rise from the desert, built by hands that knew how to turn earth into art. Imagine wandering through ancient mud brick towns or hiking across the Dixon Plateau, where dragon's blood trees tower over deep canyons. Shibam is a unique city built entirely of mud brick buildings that rise like towers. These structures are among the earliest examples of vertical urban planning. People call it the Manhattan of the desert because of how the buildings are packed closely together and rise high. However, unlike modern skyscrapers, the buildings here rely on mud, straw, and wood to stand tall. People might wonder why such tall buildings were built in a desert area. The answer lies in the limited space surrounded by farmland and the need to protect families from attacks. By building upward instead of outward, Shibam's residents solved two problems at once. Hayd al-Jazil is a striking village built on a tall rock outcrop. This was crucial because there are no nearby rivers or streams. Jabal Sabir, a mountain rising steeply from its surroundings, is known for its fertile land and long history of human settlement. Its slopes are covered with terraced fields, where locals have grown crops for centuries. These terraces have existed for over 2,000 years, built by hand using local stones, and they remain functional to this day. The primary crops grown include coffee, cat, wheat, and barley, built entirely on a steep, rocky cliff, making it look like it is part of the mountain itself. One of the most striking features of these houses is their multi-story design. Each level serves a specific purpose, making efficient use of the limited space on the steep slopes. The lower levels often house livestock or storage areas for grain and water, while the upper floors serve as living quarters. This design helps protect the main living spaces from the damp and cold coming from the ground. Taiz is a city that clings to the slopes of Jabal Saber, with its streets winding upward and its history deeply tied to resilience and creativity. One of the most intriguing sites in Taiz is the Al-Kahira Citadel. The architecture of the citadel reflects its functional design. Thick stone walls, watchtowers, and battlements made it a formidable defence structure. Inside there were water reservoirs, food storage areas, and living quarters to sustain the occupants during long periods of conflict. Archaeological evidence indicates that the citadel was also a centre for administrative control. Marib is an ancient city that once stood as the capital of a powerful kingdom known for its advanced irrigation systems and trade networks. It became famous thousands of years ago for the Marib Dam, one of the most advanced engineering projects of its time. This dam supplied water to nearby fields and made agriculture possible in a region surrounded by arid desert. Marib was also a key hub for the trade of valuable frankincense and myrrh, with caravans passing through on their way to distant markets and major trade centres. Al-Mawit is a mountain town located at an altitude of about 2,100 metres. Its history is deeply tied to ancient civilizations, with archaeological surveys revealing over 700 sites, including rock tombs and mummies dating back thousands of years. These discoveries show that the region practiced mummification techniques comparable to those of ancient Egypt, possibly even earlier than the 3rd century BCE. This earned Al-Mawit the nickname Tombs of Kings. Al-Hajarain is considered one of the most picturesque villages in Wadi Don due to its dramatic setting and well-preserved architecture. The village clings to a steep hill, creating a striking visual contrast with the flat, arid landscape surrounding it. Its mud brick homes are tightly packed, forming a layered effect that makes the village look almost like a natural extension of the hill itself. Unlike many places that faded after the decline of the incense trade, Al-Hajarain managed to survive by relying on agriculture and its ingenious irrigation system. Jabal Bura is a unique mountain surrounded by thick forests that create one of the rarest ecosystems in the region. The area is famous for its terraced farms that seem to cling to the mountainsides, and these terraces, carved by hand over generations, are used to grow coffee, cat, and various grains. The city is famous for its unique architecture. The buildings are made of mud bricks and decorated with intricate white patterns, which make them look like gingerbread houses. A special part of Sanaa''s culture is its food, and malawak is one of the standout dishes. This flaky, layered bread has a golden, crispy texture and is often served with honey, a tomato dip, or boiled eggs. The Al Saleh Mosque is one of Sanaa''s most iconic landmarks. Completed in 2008, it stands as a great example of modern Islamic architecture, while incorporating traditional Yemeni design elements. The mosque's walls are built using locally sourced black and white stones, reflecting Yemen's historical use of natural materials. Inside, the ceilings are adorned with hand-carved wooden panels, and the floors are covered with over 6,000 square meters of carpets made specifically for the mosque. Dar al-Hajar Palace. This fortified palace, built in the 1930s, served as the summer retreat of Imam Yahya, the ruler who led his country to independence. The spacious, multi-storey complex included reception halls, bathing pools, and hanging gardens irrigated by an advanced aqueduct system that drew from a well 60 metres deep. Today, thanks to painstaking restoration efforts, Dar al-Hajar is more than a historical curiosity. It's a living museum and cultural centre.
In the wheelhouse, it's a breathtaking and solemn moment. We are silent and moved.
We're talking now in the 300th year of slavery. We can see that there are high rises, a specific kind of high rise in New York City, and that they correspond to similar high rises in Africa. And so, to give credit to the African diaspora for building all of this stuff and or being enslaved to build it is just something the Gentiles don't want to do, because that will lead them to recognizing that America is Egypt, that they have taken the Israelites captive, and that they are going to pay for their sin. Yeah, so that picture of New York was basically, and those buildings, you got to think they took a long time to make. And they're always talking about, oh, they're made with straw. And I don't know about that. Not to get that tall. There are people who are still making brick in Africa, making these kinds of bricks. And it's not necessarily straw. The technique that was shown in the video on the Egyptian pyramids with the white stone in the Egyptian pyramids is the one that confirms what Yah will do. It's made with stone. It's stonework. It's masonry. It's just like cement, but there's higher qualities and better qualities of it over time. Does scripture say AI will be able to produce a voice and human beings to start to hear them? I think that woman talking, the British woman, I think she's AI. And she looks like an alien with a wig on. So I think she's probably AI or something like that. So yeah, you guys, this is basically like a compilation of all of my videos on Egypt and Africa and everything. So I just kind of smushed them all together for this. So sorry if it's a little bit, I'll probably go back and maybe cut some stuff out so it's a little shorter for everyone else coming in after this. But just to give you a picture of the, the similarities in architecture, the true land of Naphtali and Dan really being Egypt. And of course, when we move further south, we get into the true Israel, into Ethiopia and the Congo and stuff like that, which are some of the highest mountains in the world, because Africa is the most elevated land on the planet. So I have some words of encouragement for you guys. I was going to show you some of the information on what they were talking about with respect to these pyramids. The last video was really, I think it's kind of like a scam. I'm not sure, because I really think that's just a power structure. Maybe they were doing some spiritual stuff there too, not sure. And so there's some articles on that I was going to show you, but I don't know if it's 100% necessary, and some other information I wanted to share, but we're getting a little late now. It's been almost 2.5 hours, but the reason why I do these videos is, for your encouragement, and because I want the truth. It's very clear that, America is the old world. America is the original Egypt. You didn't see my Pangea videos on this, but you can go and look at my 4 Beasts Rise Up from the Sea series. It's just 2 parts, and I go more in depth into the true where the true Eden is and everything like that. And so that might help orient you a little better. But the Egypt in Africa is a colony. It was inhabited by Esau. It was inhabited by the Ethiopians, whom he is mixed in with. It was inhabited by the Philistines. It was part of Jaffa, connected to Jaffa, Alexandria. It was the land of Dan, all of those kinds of things. It's a coastal city where all of the cedar came in from in order to build the temples in Israel. It's just very, very plain that is not, the real Egypt. That is a colony. And so this is really all about distracting, because I showed you guys samples of videos that I had done like almost 6 years ago now, and they'd explain the same technology. So now they're just exposing it. But why is the question? And it's to distract you. It's to conceal the fact that America is true Egypt, and to turn people away from the idea that, the African diaspora were builders who built everything, whether in captivity or out of it. And that's not to say that other people didn't build stuff, when they didn't have Israel building it for them. But Israel certainly built everywhere, and the kingdom of Israel was quite vast. So, but let me give you some words of encouragement, family, and I'm going to go ahead and look at some of your questions while you listen to these words of encouragement. First, I'll give you this word of encouragement, and then I'm going to give you a word on the judgment coming to Egypt. And, I hope I didn't confuse you guys too much, because the fact is that Japheth really mixed in with Ham. And that's why America and Canada are Babylon, even though they're both the land of Japheth and the land of Ham. So Japheth is also Eastern Europe, but his smaller little land is Canada, basically. And Ham's is America and half of South America. So but they did a lot of mixing and intermingling, and the Khans of Japheth, the Tubal Khans of Japheth mixed in with the Canaanites of Ham, and they became with Shem and the Assyrians, and they became the evil nations. But there's good nations amongst all, Israel and those they mixed in with as well. So, but let's hear this word of encouragement, and then we'll hear what the Yah's judgment is against Egypt, and then we'll probably sign off. But go ahead and post questions if you have them. To save Israel at this time, Ezekiel 20, 34 and 38. I will bring you out from the people, and I will gather you out of the countries wherein you are scattered, with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you face to face, like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Israel. So I plead with you, saith Yahuwah Elohim, and I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. So, inspecting the sheep and making sure they can come into the land. And I will purge out from among you the rebels and them that transgress against me. And I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I'm Yahuwah. So it seems like all of Israel is coming out in the second Exodus, and then all of true Israel is being saved and allowed to come into the land. Isaiah chapter 18 and chapter 19. Woe to the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, that sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even in vessels of bulrushes upon the waters, saying, Go ye swift messengers to a nation scattered and peeled, to a people terrible from their beginning, hitherto a nation meted out and trodden down, whose land the rivers have spoiled. All ye inhabitants of the world, dwellers on earth, see ye, when he lifted up an ensign on the mountains, when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. For Yahuwah said unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear heat upon herbs, and like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. For afore the harvest, when the bud is perfect, and the sour grape is ripening in the flower, he shall cut off the sprigs with the pruning hooks, and take away and cut down the branches. They shall be left together unto the fowls of the mountains, and to the beasts of the earth, and the fowls shall summer upon them, and all the beasts of the earth shall winter upon them. In that time shall the present be brought unto the Lord of hosts, Yahuwah of hosts, of a people scattered and peeled, and from a people terrible from their beginning, hitherto a nation meted out and trodden underfoot, whose land the rivers have spoiled, to the place of the name of Yahuwah of hosts, the Mount Zion. So the land shadowing with wings beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, the Atlantic or the Ethiopic Sea, where 7 streams move through it, that's where Israel was taken by a terrible people. All right. Chapter 19, the burden of Egypt. Behold, Yahuwah rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and to the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Are there people captive in the Egypt we know of today? No. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof. And they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards. What did I say about those who peep and mutter and cause souls to fly? That's who they're seeking. They seek them to even seek of the prophets what's going on. And the Egyptians will I give into the hand of a cruel Lord. Who's ruling over America right now? And a fierce king. We got orange t-shirts, and we have Tersler. All right. And the Egyptians will I give over into the land of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith Yahuwah, the Elohim, the Yahuwah of hosts. And the water shall fail from the sea, and the river shall be wasted and dried up. Isn't Yah going to smite the seven streams? And they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brook of defense shall be emptied and dry up. The reeds and flags shall wither. Yah is going to, the earth is going to open up her mouth and swallow up the flood so Israel can return and the highway of righteousness can be made, right? The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouths of the brooks, and everything sown by the brooks shall wither, be driven away, and be no more. The fishers also shall mourn, and all they that cast an angle into the brooks shall lament anguish. So they that spread nets upon the water shall languish. Moreover, they that work in fine flax, and they that weave networks shall be confounded, and they shall be broken in the purposes thereof. All that makes sluices and ponds for fish, what? Fishing up that catfish. Where are they? Where are thy wise men? And let them tell thee now, and let them know that Yahuwah of hosts has what he has purposed upon Egypt. The princes of Zoan are become fools, and the princes of Noph are deceived. They have also seduced Egypt, even they that are the stay of the tribes thereof. Yahuwah hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt which the head or tail, branch or rush may do. In that day shall Egypt be like unto women, and it shall be afraid and fear because of the shaking of the hand of Yahuwah of hosts, which he shaketh over it. And the land of Judah shall be a terror unto Egypt. Every one that maketh mention thereof shall be afraid in himself, because of the counsel of Yahuwah of hosts, which he hath determined against it. In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan and swear to Yahuwah of hosts. One shall be called the city of destruction, right? Because they're going to burn that great city, right? The 10 kings. And in that day there shall be an altar unto Yahuwah in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to Yahuwah. And it shall be for a sign and a witness unto Yahuwah of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they shall cry unto Yahuwah because of the oppressors, and he shall send them a savior, a great one, and he shall deliver them. And Yahuwah shall be known in Egypt, and the Egyptians shall know Yahuwah in that day, and shall do sacrifice and oblation. Yea, they shall vow a vow unto Yahuwah and perform it. And Yahuwah shall smite Egypt, and he shall smite and heal it. And they shall even return unto Yahuwah, and he shall be entreated of them, and shall heal them. And in that day there will be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrian shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptian to Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. And in that day Israel be the third with Egypt, with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom Yahuwah of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, mine inheritance. So that is the prophecy of the destruction of America as Egypt, the smiting, and then Yahuwah will heal it. But this is clear. There, all of these things are not going on in this current Egypt of today with the aliens supposedly underneath it or these great power structures. So that is the word of encouragement and hope. I'm trying to end with word of hope and edification, but also in keeping with the study to help identify the land and family. I hope this encourages and helps you and gives you clarity on, just the games they're trying to play. And I hope you just really share this with other people because people need to know the truth. Why is Babylon or the Northwest going to be destroyed by Yahweh? Well, the West is determined for destruction. Enoch tells us the West is determined for destruction. It has a heart to destroy itself, and Yahweh will destroy it. He says he hides our sin as far as the east is from the west. This is the key to the very salvation of Yasharel. There's separation from the sin and Hamitic and Assyrian captors. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. The old world is the new world again. The old world is in the west, and this is where all civilizations sprung from relating to the fall, and this is what the book of Adam and Eve tells us about the west. First book of Adam and Eve 1:8. Again, also because Elohim is merciful and of great pity and governs all things in a way that he alone knows. He made our father, the old world is in the west, Adam, live in the western border of the garden, because on that side, the earth is very broad. 2 Ezra 7:13 says, then were the entrances of this world made narrow and full of sorrow and travail. They are but few and evil, full of perils and very painful. For the entrances of the elder world were wide and sure and brought immortal fruit. If then they that live labor not to enter the straight and vain things, for the entrance they can never receive those that are laid up for them. And so what we know about the West is it's very broad and it's very wide. And in the olden times, people had prosperity and righteousness. It was a sign of their righteousness, but now more so, suffering is. They can never. This is why Matthew 7:13 through 14 says, enter ye at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go thereat. Sorry, fam. I was talking and I hadn't been added to the stage. I didn't add myself. My apologies. But anyway, yeah, so that's the conclusion. I could always show you a little bit more, but I know it's getting really late and I worked on this all day. I thought it would take me a couple of hours and oh my gosh, I don't know how to, I've always been overly ambitious, I think. So I hope that you could catch the gist of it. Dan and Asher and Naphtali were really dwelling around where they call Egypt today and so-called Israel and Arabia and Yemen. Those were their lands, and the vastness of the land of Israel. Oh my gosh, that's not even the southern kingdom. That's just part of the northern kingdom. And so, no, that Egypt is just a distraction. If you have questions, post them. Oh, I see questions. So Sambuca's Eden Journey is saying here, so the natives and East Indians are one. Yeah, it's really interesting because you have to remember that Japheth and Ham mixed the most here in the West. And so, the Iroquois are, when they're in the East and the South, that is Africa and so-called the Middle East, they're called the Iraqis, right? But the Iroquois were the true Romans, all right? So if you look at, I think I actually downloaded a video where a guy is saying that, because you can look at people from the Middle East and they look like the kind of whiter colored Native Americans, like the Canadian Native Americans. They look like Iraqis and stuff, and Iranians and stuff like that, you know, but they're the true first original Romans. But the Canaanites took over their identities as usual, right? They took over everyone's identity. So yeah, but the East Indians are the Hamites, and there's actually a scripture, I can't remember where it is, where in the Bible, where it talks about how Yah banished them to Babylon for like 40 years at one point. And I believe that the East Indians were deliberately, they're the true Hamites, and they were deliberately moved out of America for the big cover up and the big shift, right? And they were all deposited in India. I think that's why India is so overpopulated. But the true India was truly Babylon, like the land of the extreme eastern land of the Shemites, like of both the Assyrians and Nebuchadnezzar and everything like that. That's where they were in India. That's part of the land of Shem. But they deposited the East Indians there. And of course, you know, the Shemites were always working for the Egyptians and the Cushites as priests, right? They were always working as priests of On, especially the Assyrians and stuff. So, you know, it's a whole heap of mix up. But, you know, long story short, America is Egypt. And, you know, what they call Egypt in Africa is not. And you know, like I said, I've shown you videos from like History Channel from like 6 years ago, and that's probably even earlier. They already knew that was a power structure. Now they're just, oh, somebody did some resonance to prove it. It's just a big distraction, because they're like trying to say we're not Egypt, even though Elon Musk said it recently. America is Egypt. You know, and we know from the eclipse, and you could see from that video that I did on the eclipse that talks about Kentucky. And man, the soapstone carvings are, you can look at the carvings in the one in Africa of the Egyptian iconography, and it just looks like clay. But if you actually look at the stone they're using in America under Illinois and Kentucky, it's like hard soapstone. It's like hard stone. Like it's like been there a long time, and it's a lot older and a lot higher quality. Okay, I'm in Canada for a while. This is what Sambuca's Eden Journey is saying. When I came back, was very surprised, but the Indians are very at home here. Yeah, this is their land. I don't know if you watched that movie with, I think it was The Rock and Gal Gadot. It's like, I guess, and Ryan Reynolds. It was some kind of adventure movie they did. It's on like Netflix or something, where they go to get treasure in South America from Egypt, and they're hired by a prince in India or something, and they have a full-on Egyptian wedding, and the guy's daughter is like, they're all East Indian, and the treasure they're looking for is tied to these people that they're working for to get the treasure. Like, it's just, they're basically saying, yeah, that's us. We're the East Indians, are the Egyptians. We're the true Cushites. You know what I mean? So it's just a big distraction. And most of all, I really wanted to show you, I know that video went a little long on Yemen, but I wanted you to see those high rises, and I think they've actually cut down the video. I don't know, I feel like they cut down the video on New York because I can't find it on my own computer and let me tell you, these people come on my computer and they scrub it. They be doing all kinds of stuff. But I used to have more video sampled from that Zeppelin balloon view of New York in the early 1900s. And it's actually supposed to be like 1915 or something. And the high rises look almost identical to the ones in Yemen. And it's like, duh, these people are the same people. But when you just look at England, you see very similar buildings, and especially like Quebec and everything like that, and France. It's just, and you got to think about well, I'll read your comment in a second, Rondell. But yeah, if you look at the Eiffel Tower is 1,000 feet. The structure underneath the pyramids in Africa, the African colony of Egypt, which is what I'm going to call it, the colony of Egypt, is basically twice the depth of the height of the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower is 1,000 feet. So the technology that goes down into the earth goes down 2,000 feet. And that's twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. And who built the Eiffel Tower? Probably the same people. It's like, you can see why they were so mad at Jeroboam was so mad at Rehoboam and Solomon. They were like, ninja? They were like, you had us build 2,000 feet of electric, power structures, and you want us to, you're treating us just like the Egyptians. Well, we'll just go back to Egypt then. And so that's what they did. And Esau, Edom, and the Egyptians and the Assyrians all saw that, and they were like, yeah, they are treating them worse than a stepchild. No wonder they're going to come back here. Let's make it real comfortable for them over here. And we'll call them kings over here and everything. And especially when you see Prester John and everything, that's what they did. That's what they did. I said, okay, well, you come on over. We'll take your land. Thank you. All right. All right. I heard they own and operate 38% and more of America. Who does? What am I missing here? Who operates 38% or more of America? What was I talking about something? And then just put in Rondell, just put who you mean in there, and so I can, but anyway, I get it. Somebody's operating 38% or more of, the East Indians. Gotcha. Yeah, that's why they have them in all these government positions now, if you haven't noticed that. And Kamala is part East Indian, she was. And notice how she's nowhere to be found because she didn't want that job. She was never going to get it. She had a role to play. She's out. But yeah, in Britain, and like America, especially, they're putting East Indians everywhere because they have to come back to their land now. And that prophecy has to come true, that there will be a highway from Assyria to Egypt. And one of the reasons for that is a lot of people are escaping to South America now. If you listen to, what's her name? That little girl that I like. I just call her little because she looks like she's tiny. Whitney Webb. She's over there in South America, child. She said she's in South America growing her own garden. And she's fighting the fight from over there, right? Now, people are like, oh, she's an agent and a gatekeeper and all the rest of it. Who knows? 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other, But so there will be a highway from there to Egypt, which is back to America, because people will be trying to leave. But, I don't want to sit here and talk all day because you guys know I can talk. My goodness. People who know me or met me, I talk like crazy. But yeah, I saw that. So any other questions, fam? I hope you were able to receive a word of encouragement. Please, fam, do go to my Into All Truth page. I'll run a little promo for that. Pick up yourself a calendar and a cookbook. And I am still working on my book on the geography of the earth and the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I just can only do it according to what Yah tells me to do. Like I wanted it to be out like last year this time, and it's 1 year later, but I guess I got to get it right. So I hope you guys are enjoying your Pesach and your Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now we're in the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And thank you for everyone who purchased a calendar. It's much appreciated. I will be probably on First Fruits doing an update teaching. Oh my gosh, you guys, because you know, I go back and forth on things, and I really need a little calendar council, a calendar council to just keep me in check, because sometimes I'm like, oh, was I wrong about that? And I'll teach one thing, and then I'll be like, someone else will change my mind, and then I'll be wait a minute, I was right before. So. And it's once you get, because I'm like ahead of everybody, every other male teacher on my calendar. I'm ahead of everyone. And then I'll go, oh, but maybe that guy is right because he's a guy. I mean, you know, and so I'll go back and I'll look at what they're teaching. I went back and looked at the actual guy who taught me about my calendar, but he doesn't have the day right anymore, and he doesn't have a bunch of stuff right. But I went back and listened to some people teaching his calendar, and I went with what they were teaching. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's wrong. So, you know, I'm just flawed like anybody else. I try to be perfect, but I'm not, you know. Oh my gosh, there's way more questions down here. No, wait a minute. What's going on? Okay, let me see more questions. Am I seeing more questions? I may just cut the end of this. It says, everyone and Eretz came to America. It could be a better place. Yeah, all I see is, yeah, the Indians. I don't know what on Eretz. Do you mean everyone on Earth, like Eretz Azarath, everyone on Earth came to America? It could be a better place. Like, you mean the aliens? I don't know what you're saying. But anyway, fam, it's just getting late, and I don't want to bore you unless somebody's got some like extreme questions they want answered. Earth, yeah, that's what I thought you meant. Same word, Earth. But you mean the aliens? That's the only one who's not here who could come here. Or I guess they're in the outer realm. What Tesla calls Mars, which is just like sealed out land. But anyway, I'm going to run my end credits here, Mishpachah, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys. And I hope this was useful to you so you can make your arguments. Sorry it's so jumbly, but it was meant to be a partial live. And yeah, let me just run my extra, and then thank you all my moderators. I think some people have dipped out now, but thanks to Gwendolyn and Puchna, and I don't know who else was in here. I think obviously Kelly was here. Thank you all. I appreciate you, and everyone who chatted. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy the lives for just interacting with you guys. All right. And let me know if you guys want a calendar class. I need a calendar council and a calendar class. But let me run these extras here, fam. My media assets. Let's see if I got the right one here. I think I do. No, this is the outro. Thank you for watching. Thanks for your donations. Please like, subscribe, and share, or go to intoalltruth.net to get our appointed times calendar so you can keep the appointed times at the right time.
Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying hallelujah.
Shalom, fam. Love you in Yahuwah.